Hello, welcome to our channels, Bad Tempered Badger and Alpha 4, designation Alpha 4 IV. I am Ramon, that is Bad Tempered Badger, and this is the closing of our debate. This will be our final topic, and the topic of the day, of this moment, of the hour, is does man or God decide what qualifies as evil? The first two topics, I did the opener, and the last two, it is Bad Tempered Badger's chance to open. I will be doing the closing. He will not respond after the final comment. So, how it stands is how it stands. We ask that you, our audience, please comment in our videos and tell us who you think was right and wrong. Give us the longest explanation you feel like giving, and we will respond to those. And we may later, if we choose to, do a follow-up video where we discuss the topics, assuming you guys are interested enough to comment. I now give the floor to Bad Tempered Badger.
Does man or God decide what qualifies as evil? The obvious atheistic position to take is, of course, that man created God. So, of course, man decides what God considers evil. This to many atheists would go without saying, being one of the major reasons many of us abandoned religion in the first place. Let's take a moment, though, to re-examine the concept. Does man decide what qualifies as evil? Man. It's curious how so many of the earth's religions so favor the man over the woman. In the Bible, for example, men may own land, property, be prophets, and rule empires. Women, on the other hand, are subservient, mentioned mostly as wife of or daughter of. Rarely as important characters in their own right, and even then, often as vile, lying deceivers to be avoided. A woman who deviates from her subservient role is considered evil. Women were considered the property of men, and in some religions still are. Man can also be the man, the establishment. Leading religions tend to be constructed to value the group over the individual, the structure of society over the wants of those within it. Conformity is the focus, following set doctrine and dogma, not thinking outside the box. Different is considered evil and degenerate. Anyone who doesn't fit the mold is shunned and in some cases persecuted and killed. It's interesting to observe how religions have changed over time. Christianity, for example, has evolved far from its roots. So far, in fact, that it would probably be unrecognizable to its founders. This is not, as some would claim, due to a better understanding of the word or will of God, but because human morality has changed and improved. Many of the teachings of the Bible no longer work, having been superseded by new knowledge and incompatible societal norms. Religious teachings have changed to fit the morality of the times, not the other way around. The barbaric tribal warmongering of the Old Testament no longer has a place in modern society. The God portrayed in its pages was a moral monster, committing terrible atrocities in the process of dragging its favorite little tribe across the desert to the promised land. This version of God is, as Dawkins puts it, the most unpleasant character in all fiction, jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynist, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. To a primitive warlike tribal culture, such a god was exactly what they wanted. But in the modern world, it's a disaster. Look at the various fundamentalist Islamic countries to see why. As history progressed through the medieval period, things only marginally improved. Holy wars and inquisitions have led to a great deal of unnecessary suffering. Just looking at the Catholic Church, there is a long history of persecution of any dissenting voice as heretical. Throughout most of the Church's history, being labelled a heretic could have one imprisoned or executed. The Inquisitions, which swept across Europe, performing witch trials, burning heretics, and forcibly converting people of other faiths, are a clear example that evil can just as easily come from those claiming to follow God's word as those opposing it. A favourite quote among atheists is, "With or without religion, you would have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion." Evil is not dictated from on high, but is a subjective concept decided upon by people trying, in their own varied and flawed ways, to create a better world. That's my statement.
All right. So now for my prepared rebuttal. Does man or God decide what qualifies as evil? Sin and evil are real, a reality of history, from Holocausts to genocides, false accusations, treachery, duplicity, infidelity, murder, rape, pedophilia, theft, and robbery. It cannot be ignored nor denied. But what is evil? And who decides it? Evil is moral wrong that is harmful and injurious. For an action or deed to be considered evil, it must be due to bad conduct made in full knowledge of the harm it can give rise to. Sin, on the other hand, is the transgression or violation done willfully and deliberately against some moral principle of a divine or natural law. God is the one who decides what is and what is not evil, and what qualifies as a sin or not. I will begin with a train of thought inspired by Kierkegaard and his masterpiece, Fear and Trembling. My thought is this: for ethics to be true, they must be universal. Thus, they must apply to everyone, and at every moment. That they must apply to everyone and at every moment. But because trial and error are how we learn, the moment a single individual asserts themselves, a sin is undoubtedly committed. And only by acknowledging our error and correcting it can we be reconciled to the universe and reality. The urge to assert our free will is temptation, for we are both subject to the universe and able to influence it. The fact that this is a paradox is lost on no one, but it is still a true fact. But this very paradox means that we cannot rely on the individual to be the arbiter of good and evil. It must be extracted to the form, and that form decided on by the society that that individual resides in. But if reason and free will are needed for sin to be an evil, one must possess these faculties to be capable of sin. Therefore, the sin you are responsible for is dependent on the level of reason and independence you are capable of and not vice versa. But first, let's define what evil is not. According to Basil of Caesarea, pain and suffering on their own are not evil. Evil is the privation, that is the lack of good, much as cold is the lack of heat. Evil is neither independent nor created. But why be capable of evil at all? Because being self-determining, we are able to choose a perceived good over a true good, which happens when we perceive pleasure as an end in itself, which is the same mistake as perceiving suffering which is the same mistake as perceiving suffering or pain as an evil in itself. Tertullian also answered this question when he says man was responsible for evil, not God. Evil was an unintended but necessary consequence of freedom and the power of choice. For law is only established if one has the power of choosing obedience or disobedience. For otherwise, no law would ever be just. Whether you believe in a God or not, it is a great mystery that providence permits sin and evil to exist as an activity at all. Yet, for a religious person, the answer is simple. Sin is a choice. It is an abuse of freedom, an act of disobedience against a divine or natural law, acting against one's own nature. For most Christians and for all Catholics, Adam, that is mankind, is the source of sin, not the devil, not God. But you may ask, what is evil if you don't believe in God? From a naturalistic and materialistic viewpoint, a sin can be seen to be evil when the long-term negative temporal consequences outweigh the good. A sin, in this case, would be an offense against reason, truth, conscience, and love. In either case, the result is the same. A sin is an action that moves us away from our ultimate goal. It takes us away from our supreme good, and it distorts our aim. Therefore, to the religious-minded person, sin is before all else an offense against God. For God is the wronged party. The thief is not the one who gets to decide what he did. The thief is not the one who gets to decide if what he did is justified. It is instead the one whose goods were stolen who decides whether or not to take offense. And thus, it is the wronged party who defines what is a wrong and what is not. That is my case for God being the one to decide who decides what is good and evil. That's it.
Right. Let me check my notes make sense.
Yeah. You ready?
Getting there. Right. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ivy. Now for my my unplanned response. Sin and evil. There are many acts that are defined as evil by both the religious and the non-religious. You mentioned holocausts, genocides, infidelity, rape, robbery, murder. You say evil is moral wrong, harmful acts that are done in the knowledge of the harm they will cause. Say that acts done without the full knowledge of their consequences are not evil but misguided. You say evil is a consequence of freedom. Sin is a choice, an abuse of freedom, disobedience. You say God decides. Let's say we were the wronged party in this scenario when God created us sick and commanded us to be well, created us unable to ever live up to his supposed rules, but yet damned us for not doing so. In this scenario, God created individuals for the sadistic pleasure of judging them unworthy of his love, but then saving them anyway, or some of them. You say that for ethics to be true, they must be universal, but why is that? Ethics apply differently to different societies with different values. The ethics that apply to a subsistence tribal economy are not the same as the ethics that apply to a vast global society. A society where one person choosing not to sow crops will mean the deaths of everyone is greatly different to a person whose choice to move from the country to the city will bring in vastly more income than if he'd stayed tending the crops. Morality is subjective because people's experiences are different. There is no universal moral code other than what some have called the golden rule. Do unto others as you would wish them to do to yourself. This is universal not because it is stated so by a divine entity, but because the efficacy of its use is clear when applied. I don't want to be murdered, so I don't murder others. I want my property to remain mine, so I don't take other people's property. Finally, you say, it is God who decides, and God is the overall authority on what is just, good, and moral. But if there is no God, the individual is all there is to decide. It is my position that that is the case. The individual is all there is to decide on morality, and the individual must make best use of their knowledge and mental faculties to make the best decision they can with the limited knowledge available to them. That's my response.
Could you repeat the very last part toward the end again?
If there is no God, the individual is all there is, and it is up to every individual to use their mental faculties and capabilities and the limited knowledge available to them to make the best decision they can. Best decisions.
Okay. Yeah, you ready?
Mm-hmm. Just one second, let me check I'm recording. Yes, I am.
So, you have heard Bad-Tempered Badger's case against religion. He has discounted infallibility. Discounted inspiration, said that the lack of evidence isn't evident. And now he has said that evil can be decided by an individual. That what is good or evil for me is only on me. And what is good and evil for him has nothing to do with each other. That the golden rule is the only proof of anything in reality. That man created the gods. Well, if what you're talking about when you say God is the anthropomorphic, personalized, humanized individual that sits up in a cloud with blue eyes or brown eyes or shoots lightning, then yes, that is a created concept by the human mind. But if what you mean by God is that which set all in motion, that which existed before and which will exist after, that which set up gravity and physics, that God is real, whether you want to call it God or call it something else. Those are absolutes. Those are universals. He says the individual is the arbiter of good and evil. I say free will and free choice make that impossible, because every choice can be something different. He says human reality and human morality are the greatest constructs in this argument. Well, I say that relativism and shifting norms prove that cannot be true. He says correctly that God is a jealous and angry God. He is. But he's also merciful and forgiving. It is possible to be more than one thing at one time. Simplistic as we all may be, even we have multiple varieties to ourselves. He says Islam is an example of the worst. Well, Islam has been the example of the best of humanity during the great societies and the civilizations. When Europe lost mathematics and science, it was Islam that kept it alive. When secularism lost the ability to read, it is Catholicism that kept ancient literature going in the form of Latin, long after Latin had fallen out of use. You like science, you like history, you like the history you use to disprove religion. Guess what? It were religious people who kept those writings alive. He says heretics and heresies caused the Inquisition. I say the people who did those are not the church. The individuals and the nations and the kings and queens who did such actions were not the Pope and not the church, but the individual members deciding to do so. And the Pope actually wrote against such actions. The Pope had condemned slavery. It is not his fault that his membership, that his followers, that his members chose not to listen to the head, to the mouthpiece. People are not their faith. We are created by God, declared by God. Laws are created. We are not damned. We were created good, declared good by God. We are not damned. We are worthy. You are already accepted the way you are, and God does love you. Death is not a punishment on its own. There are times that it can be a mercy or a reward. The golden rule, which he loved to quote, is biblical. And there are other universal ethics, but I ran out of time. I will end with this note. Your argument of relativity proves, of the relativity of morals, proves that it cannot be individualistic and must be outsourced to a higher authority, whether that be society, civilization, or the supernatural. And that is my rebuttal. And we're done. That's everything.
Well, that was an interesting series of debates. Hopefully somebody will get some enjoyment and new knowledge out of them. And hopefully they might start a discussion in the comments about who's right and who's wrong. Of course, I think I definitely won in that regard.
I think.
So thanks for watching. Everyone.
Hold on there. I think there was. I think I'll give you one. I say you beat me in one. I think I won the other three. I'll be honest with you. I think I won the other three. I'm just saying.
Well, we'll have to see what people think, won't we?
Well, on that note, I'm going to give an outro to my audience, and I'm sure that he will give an outro to his. Thank you for watching this debate. Going forward, should more debates happen, we discovered that it was a technical and time-consuming mistake to have 4 topics in one video. Going forward, we will only be doing 1 topic per debate. Other people are welcome to debate us. I am sure Bad Tempered feels the same way. Anyone who wants to debate me, put me a link to your channel down below and I will check it out. The only thing that I ask is that you have under 1,000 subscribers and that you have at least 12 videos, just so I can see what your content is like and have a Discord so we can do this kind of thing. I am open to debate anyone. Anyone who wants to debate me, I'm open to it. That's it for me. Talk to you all later. Please like and subscribe. Bad Tempered Badger?
In the same vein, I'm open to debate people. However, my stipulations are I'll only do friendly debates. By friendly, I don't mean we agree. That kind of defeats the purpose of the debate, doesn't it? What I mean is I won't do argumentative, just shouting at each other debates. I'm not going to go on the Kumite style things or anything like that. If you come looking for a debate, we have to be able to have a civil conversation outside of the debate. That's all from me, so thanks for watching, everyone.